My dear friends, the world has always believed that America dictates global trade. For decades, developing nations bent their knees, adjusted their policies, and followed the blueprint laid out by Washington. But then came a moment that shocked everyone. India, a rising giant, decided to walk away from America's terms. People questioned the move. Critics mocked it, and analysts declared it suicidal. But hidden beneath the noise lies the truth. India didn't end trade with America out of weakness. It did it out of strength, self-respect, and a burning desire to prove that no nation should live forever under someone else's shadow. For years, America enjoyed the luxury of being the world's #1 economy, and with that came arrogance. Countries like India were expected to accept unfair trade deals where American goods flooded Indian markets, while Indian exports faced restrictions and endless barriers. This was not trade, it was dominance disguised as partnership. And when a nation begins to wake up to its own potential, it can no longer tolerate being treated like a secondary player. India realized that being chained to the American system was not progress, it was dependency. History teaches us that revolutions don't always come through violence. Sometimes they come quietly, through decisions that seem risky but change the course of destiny. India's choice to step back from America wasn't just about tariffs, markets, or exports. It was about dignity. It was about reclaiming control over its economy. It was about telling the world, we will no longer play by your rules, we will create our own. And in that single act, India ignited a fire of confidence not just for itself, but for other nations watching closely. The truth is, America had become too comfortable. For decades, it saw India as a consumer market, a place to dump products, and a workforce to exploit cheaply. But the new India is not the India of yesterday. With innovation, technology, and a young population hungry to prove itself, India realized it held more bargaining power than the world assumed. Ending trade under America's terms was not suicide. It was strategy. It was a calculated step towards building self-reliance, a vision captured in the idea of Atmanirbhar Bharat. What most people fail to see is that true growth comes when a nation believes it deserves better. America's economic influence had made India dependent in subtle ways, whether it was through agricultural imports, energy deals, or technology transfers. Each trade agreement looked beneficial on the surface, but deep inside, it was eroding India's independence. And independence is not negotiable. For a country that fought centuries of colonialism, the thought of modern-day economic slavery was unbearable. This decision was India's declaration that it will no longer trade freedom for convenience. The backlash was immediate. Analysts predicted India's downfall. They warned of economic collapse, job losses, and international isolation. But those who understand history know that every great transformation begins with sacrifice. When America declared independence from Britain, it too was mocked. When Japan rebuilt itself after the war, it too was doubted. India's bold step fits into the same story, where short-term struggle is the price for long-term power. And the leaders who made this decision were not short-sighted, they were visionaries. People ask, why risk it? Why challenge the biggest economy in the world? The answer lies in one word: respect. You can trade money, you can trade products, but you can never trade self-respect. America's policies often came with conditions that undermined India's sovereignty, whether it was pushing corporate giants into Indian markets or dictating agricultural subsidies. Every deal had strings attached. By stepping back, India was sending a message not just to America, but to every global power: respect us as equals, or don't expect our cooperation. Another hidden truth is that America needs India as much as India needs America. With one of the world's largest consumer bases, India is not just a buyer, it is a marketplace of dreams. Every global company wants a piece of India's billion-plus population. By ending one-sided trade, India forced America to confront a new reality. The days of dictating terms are over. If America wants access, it must come with fairness, balance, and respect. This shift in power dynamic is what truly shook the global stage. The decision also sparked something deeper within the Indian people. For decades, citizens believed progress was tied to Western approval, but suddenly they saw their nation refusing to bow down. That sparked pride, confidence, and belief that India's future does not depend on anyone else's permission. A psychological shift happened, a sense of ownership over the nation's destiny. And once a population awakens to its own power, no external force can suppress it. This is why the move became more than economics. It became an emotional revolution. Critics often underestimate the resilience of nations like India. They believe dependency equals stability, but history proves the opposite. True stability comes when a nation can stand on its own feet, even if it stumbles at first. Ending trade with America wasn't about closing doors. It was about opening new ones. India expanded its partnerships with Asia, Africa, and Europe. It invested in self-sufficiency in energy, agriculture, and technology. The world began to see India not as a follower, but as a leader shaping its own economic destiny. Behind the headlines, what truly scared the world was not India's withdrawal, but its courage, because courage is contagious. Other nations watched closely, realizing they too could challenge unfair systems. If India could break away from America's grip, what stopped others? Suddenly, America's dominance looked less invincible, less eternal. That's the real fear. When one nation proves that the so-called superpower can be questioned, the illusion of control shatters for everyone. For America, this was a wake-up call. For decades, it operated as if global dominance was its birthright. But India reminded the world that power is never permanent. It shifts, it evolves, it transfers. No empire has ever lasted forever, and America is no exception. The cracks in its influence became visible not because of war or sanctions, but because of a bold, calculated choice by a rising nation. And once those cracks appear, the world never looks at the superpower the same way again. Some say India's move was reckless, but what they forget is that no great achievement comes without risk. Walking away from America was like burning a bridge, but sometimes you must burn the bridge so you can never go back to weakness. That's how revolutions are born, not by playing safe, but by daring to step into the unknown. India chose uncertainty over dependency, risk over submission, and pride over compromise. And that decision, no matter the short-term pain, will carve a path for generations to come. The real truth is this: India didn't end trade with America to isolate itself. It ended it to redefine itself. It was a move not of separation, but of self-creation, a statement to its people that the future will be built on Indian terms, not borrowed from others. And when a nation begins to believe in its own potential, the world has no choice but to pay attention, because the strongest nations are not those who follow, they are those who lead. And in this moment, India chose to lead. This is not just about economics, it is about psychology, identity, and destiny. By cutting ties with America's dominance, India sent a clear message. Our worth is not defined by foreign validation. Our success will not be measured by Western approval. This decision is the beginning of a new chapter in global history, where nations rise not by imitation, but by self-determination. And that is the real truth America doesn't want you to see. The story of India's decision is also the story of breaking chains that were invisible to most people. Economic dependency is a subtle form of slavery, one that does not show itself in chains or whips, but in contracts, deals, and policies designed to keep a nation dependent. America mastered this art, presenting its dominance as partnership. But India began to see through the illusion. The realization was simple: if you cannot make your own rules, you are not truly free. And freedom has always been India's greatest aspiration, worth any sacrifice. What people misunderstand is that India did not reject America. It rejected the imbalance. It rejected the arrogance hidden within trade policies. It rejected the idea that one nation should dictate how another feeds its people, builds its industries, or runs its economy. America thought India would never dare to say no because the benefits seemed too great. But India's leaders saw the trap. Those benefits came with invisible strings that grew tighter with every deal. Saying no was not an act of hostility. It was an act of liberation. The move also highlights the rise of a new world order. For decades, global power has been concentrated in the West, where America and its allies held the keys to trade, technology, and finance. But the world is shifting. Asia is rising. Africa is awakening, and new alliances are forming. India stepping away from America is not isolation. It is alignment with a future where no single nation dictates the rules. This is why the decision matters so much. It is not just about India. It is about a world refusing to be dominated. Inside India, the decision sparked fierce debates. Some feared that without American cooperation, progress would stall. But others understood a deeper truth. Reliance on one powerful partner creates weakness, not strength. India has one of the largest young populations in the world, an ocean of talent and creativity waiting to be unleashed. Depending on foreign trade deals was like keeping a lion in a cage, safe, predictable, but never powerful. By ending the dependency, India opened the cage. Now the lion roars. America underestimated the psychological strength of India's people. For too long, the Western narrative painted developing nations as incapable of thriving without guidance. But India has always been a land of resilience. A civilization that has survived invasions, colonization, and exploitation does not need a tutor. It needs freedom. The decision to step away was a reminder to the world that India's strength lies not in Western approval, but in its own heritage, innovation, and courage. That awakening was inevitable, and once it came, nothing could stop it. Another truth hidden from the global audience is the double standards America often applied. It preached free trade, but practiced protectionism when its interests were threatened. It demanded open markets abroad, but fiercely defended its own industries. India saw this hypocrisy and realized it was not trade, it was control. The choice to end the cycle was not reckless, it was logical. Because if the game is rigged, the only way to win is to stop playing altogether. And India, for the first time, refused to play. This shift also forced Indian businesses to adapt and grow. Without easy access to American markets or products, local industries were challenged to innovate. Agriculture sought self-reliance, technology startups built homegrown solutions, and manufacturing expanded with new vigor. What seemed like a loss became an opportunity. Pressure builds strength, and for India, this was the pressure it needed to evolve. Instead of being dependent on imports, it began creating exports the world wanted. Pain became progress and struggle became strength. The decision was also deeply symbolic. It reminded every Indian citizen that the days of bowing down to foreign masters are over. Colonialism had left scars, but this act of defiance was healing. It was proof that India no longer sees itself as a follower. It sees itself as a leader. This psychological empowerment is more valuable than any trade deal, because when a nation believes in its power, it can achieve miracles. And once this belief spreads among 1 billion people, the future becomes unstoppable. Of course, America did not take the decision lightly. Behind closed doors, pressure campaigns, lobbying, and threats were deployed to force India back into submission. But unlike in the past, India held firm. It refused to bend, refused to compromise on its sovereignty. And in that moment, the world saw something new. A nation willing to endure temporary pain for permanent strength. America had met its match, not through war or confrontation, but through silent defiance. That silence was louder than any speech. What shocked global analysts was not just India's decision, but its timing. At a moment when the world was unstable, when economies were shaken, India chose independence. That showed confidence. That showed vision. Leaders who make safe choices never change history. It is the leaders who take bold risks that redefine the future. India's timing proved that it was ready to embrace uncertainty and carve its own path. And in doing so, it became a symbol for nations who dream of freedom but fear the cost. The economic shockwaves were real. Markets trembled, investors panicked, and critics celebrated too soon, predicting disaster. But India remained calm, because sometimes collapse is not destruction, it is transformation. Just as a seed must break before it grows into a tree, India understood. That short-term disruption was necessary for long-term greatness. America expected desperation, but India showed discipline. And discipline is the foundation of every empire that has ever risen from the ashes of doubt. For the common Indian citizen, this was more than an economic decision. It was a moral one. It told them that their nation will no longer compromise dignity for dollars, that their leaders value sovereignty over convenience, and that their identity as Indians will not be shaped by foreign pressure, but by their own choices. This gave people hope, pride, and a sense of belonging to something greater than themselves. That emotional bond between people and nation is stronger than any currency, stronger than any trade. The global balance of power is shifting, and India's decision is one of the sparks fueling this transformation. When one nation breaks away, others begin to question their own positions. Already, whispers spread among developing nations. If India can stand up, why can't we? The ripple effect has begun, and America knows it. Its dominance is being challenged not through war, but through courage. And courage is the one resource that cannot be bought, cannot be suppressed, and cannot be negotiated away. What America failed to realize is that trade is not just about goods and services. It is about identity, about pride, about the story a nation tells itself. By ending trade on America's terms, India wrote a new story, that it is no longer a pawn in someone else's game. It is a player, powerful and independent. That story is what inspires its people, motivates its youth, and challenges its rivals. And stories once written cannot be erased. India's story has just begun, and the world is watching. The world is built on power, and power respects only one thing: strength. For too long, America believed it held a monopoly on strength, but India's move shattered that illusion. By walking away from unfair trade, India showed that true strength is not in money, not in weapons, not in influence, but in the courage to stand alone when everyone else is afraid. That act of defiance placed India in a unique position, not as a victim of global politics, but as a creator of its own destiny. And creators write the future. This decision is also a warning to future generations. Never allow prosperity to become dependency. Nations that grow too comfortable leaning on others eventually forget how to stand tall. India saw this danger and cut the rope before it was too late. Yes, America offered benefits. Yes, the trade seemed convenient, but convenience is the enemy of greatness. By refusing the easy path, India chose the harder road, the one that demands sacrifice, resilience, and vision. And history always rewards the ones who dare to take that road. What truly unsettled America was that India's move was not impulsive. It was strategic. It wasn't driven by anger, but by calculation. India had quietly prepared itself, strengthening ties with alternative markets, building local industries, and diversifying its energy sources. When the moment came, it was not a leap into darkness, it was a leap into freedom. America expected hesitation, but India responded with certainty. That certainty revealed the truth. The balance of global power had already shifted. America just hadn't realized it yet. For the Indian youth, this moment became a turning point. They grew up hearing that success meant following Western models, adopting Western systems, and chasing Western validation. But suddenly, their nation proved that it could reject the West and still rise. That shattered an old mindset and built a new one. We are enough. We are capable. And we are the future. This psychological shift among the young generation is more powerful than any policy, because a confident youth is the fuel of an unstoppable nation. India's step also redefined the meaning of partnership. Real partnership means equality, mutual respect, and shared growth. What India had with America was not partnership. It was dependency dressed as cooperation. By breaking free, India forced the world to rethink what global relationships should look like. It set a new standard. We will not be treated as consumers. We will be treated as equals. This was not just India speaking. It was the voice of every nation tired of being exploited under the banner of friendship. The critics who doubted India misunderstood one thing: struggle is not weakness. It is strength in disguise. Every empire in history faced its trial by fire before rising to greatness. America itself struggled for independence. China endured decades of hardship. Japan rebuilt from ruins. Now it is India's turn. Struggle is the crucible that forges nations, and India is ready to be forged. The decision to walk away was not the end of comfort. It was the beginning of greatness, born from sacrifice and vision. The global media tried to spin the story as a mistake, but deep down they knew the truth. Because the biggest fear of those in power is not losing resources, but losing control. India's move symbolized a shift in control. For the first time, America was not calling the shots. For the first time, the narrative belonged to India. And once a nation begins to control its narrative, it no longer dances to another's tune. That is the true revolution. When a people claim the power to tell their own story, it also revealed the truth about global interdependence. America is not invincible. Its markets need access. Its corporations need consumers. Its industries need partners. India proved that America's dominance is not absolute. It is dependent on cooperation from others. By saying no, India forced America to realize that its power rests on fragile ground. And once that realization spreads, America will have to negotiate, not dictate. That shift from dominance to dialogue is the future of global trade. For ordinary Indians, this decision carried a deeper meaning: dignity. For centuries, they were told that their nation was too weak, too poor, too dependent to stand up for itself. But when the government took this bold step, it shattered that belief. It reminded people of their strength, their resilience, and their worth. That emotional empowerment is priceless, because a people who believe in their dignity will never again accept exploitation. This is how revolutions begin, not in boardrooms, but in the hearts of citizens. India's story is proof that greatness does not come from following. It comes from leading. America became a superpower because it refused to remain a colony. China became a giant because it refused to remain poor. And now India steps into history by refusing to remain dependent. The pattern is clear. Nations that dare to say no become the nations that rewrite the future. By ending trade with America, India chose to be the author of its destiny instead of a character in someone else's script. The most powerful aspect of this decision is its psychological warfare. America expected India to fear isolation, but instead it was America that felt threatened. The world began asking, if India can survive without America, then maybe America is not as necessary as we thought. That seed of doubt spreads like wildfire, weakening America's aura of invincibility. India didn't just end trade. It ended the illusion that America is the only path to progress. And illusions, once broken, cannot be rebuilt. The resilience of India also comes from its history. This is a land that has seen empires rise and fall, colonizers come and go, invaders attempt to rule but fail to destroy its spirit. That spirit is alive today, refusing to be bent by modern economic chains. By stepping away, India honored its ancestors who fought for freedom. It proved that independence is not a gift handed down once in 1947. It is a responsibility renewed with every generation. And this generation chose to carry that responsibility with pride. What many don't realize is that this decision is not the end. It is the beginning of a new era, a new India that builds on its own strengths, invests in its own people, and creates its own opportunities. This is how self-reliance is born, not by rejecting the world, but by engaging with it on equal terms. India's message is simple. We are not closing doors, we are opening new ones, but on our conditions, not yours. And that is what terrifies those who once held the keys to power. The ripple effect is only just beginning. Nations across Asia, Africa, and Latin America are watching closely, inspired by India's courage. If the world's largest democracy can walk away from the most powerful economy, why can't they? This decision is bigger than India. It is the spark of a global movement, a movement towards equality, respect, and independence. And once that movement gathers momentum, no single nation, no matter how powerful, can stop it. Because ideas are stronger than armies, and freedom is stronger than fear. India's choice will be remembered not as a trade decision, but as a declaration of independence in the modern age. Just as America once declared its freedom from Britain, India declared its freedom from economic dominance. This is the real truth. India is not afraid of sacrifice, not afraid of risk, and not afraid of standing alone. It chose pride over profit, respect over compromise, and freedom over dependency. And in doing so, it wrote a new chapter in world history, a chapter where India leads.